My name's Catherine Hewgill. Music is my life, basically, and the cello is my life. Yeah, I was made to learn the piano at the age of 8, and I hated it. I just hated the mechanical thing of the piano, of it being a piece of furniture that you approached and then you'd play the wrong notes inevitably. But with the cello, it was an instrument. It's so physical. I mean, you just envelop it with your body. You feel the vibrations. It's a much more human instrument. I felt really easily able to relate to it. I used to practice in a room off the kitchen. It was the dining room, and I practiced there because, of course, all the stuff that happens in a house is in the kitchen, and I just wanted everybody to hear me. But then my parents, being amateur musicians, would always say sometimes, "Don't you think that's a bit sharp, or don't you think that's a bit flat?" And I would get absolutely furious. But nevertheless, I wanted them to hear me. So I kept practicing over the years, and for me, the cello was my responsibility. Unlike the piano, had been forced to learn the piano, but the cello was my decision, and I was determined to make it work. So I really would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, practice for an hour and a half before school, come home, practice late into the night after I'd finished my bit of homework, which wasn't really always the most important thing in my mind. It's a string quartet from England, the Alboni String Quartet, who had come to Perth to be quartet in residence at the University of Western Australia. The cellist in that quartet decided to leave and come to live in Perth permanently. So he would go backwards and forwards, and he actually searched out a cello for me in England, bought that for me, brought it back to Australia. That was my first instrument. I was so excited when I got that instrument. I remember lying on the floor with a dog saying, "I'm about to go and pick up my first cello." And I remember I remember opening the case, the smell of the glue in the case, because the case was pretty new, it was brand new. I remember everything about it. And this cello I absolutely adored. I called it Reginald. I don't know why, but it was called Reginald. And it had a tailpiece with diamantes stuck in it, 3 diamantes. And I thought that was the most wonderful thing. I didn't get my second cello until I was at university. That was a French cello. And then I graduated from that to the cello I play on now, which is a beautiful Carlo Tononi cello made in Venice in 1729. I wasn't actually looking actively at the time, but my teacher in Los Angeles, Gabor Raito, happened to go into a violin shop, and this cello had just been put on consignment the day before. And the owner of the violin shop wanted him to try the cello. So my teacher tried it and said, in his very Hungarian accent, "I know someone who will love this cello." So he took it out of the shop on loan and brought it to my lesson, which was the next day. And I played one note, basically felt absolutely in love with it. Took it back to my apartment in Los Angeles and called my father and said, "I've got this cello, I've got to have it." He said, "Well, how much is it?" So it was a very long and stressful period of time before I was actually able to purchase it. I called it Richmond. That was my father's middle name, and I felt I owed it to him. I think he was quite chuffed about that. But my cello is, it's quite fat. It's got very wide belly and wide rounded back as well. And I think it's like love at first sight that some people claim is something that happens. It was a D. I remember the note. It was a bottom D, and the bottom notes of the cello are so rich and round. I mean, I think the bottom notes really kind of encompass what everybody loves about the cello, the instrument. It's the fat sound, it's the warmth and the beautiful vibrations. So I played a bottom D, and it was just so resonant and round on this instrument, and it spoke so easily, and I just knew from that first second that I was in love with that cello. That's just a bit of bark, yeah.